okay, so the Mr. McMahon documentary was a documentary on Vince McMahon, basically the king of wrestling. If you don't watch wrestling, Vince McMahon is responsible for everything you know in the world of professional wrestling to this day. He's a billionaire. He turned the wrestling business into a billion-dollar international sensation. And Vince is a crazy, crazy person. Okay. Anybody that's watched wrestling was not surprised by any of the stuff that we saw in the lawsuit. Like nobody was surprised. Vince is Vince. So this Netflix documentary comes out and everybody is expecting like, oh man, we're going to learn all of this information on Vince McMahon. We're going to learn all of this dirt on Vince McMahon. Now, what you need to know is that Netflix has a deal with the WWE starting next year. So WWE is going to Netflix starting next year. Vince McMahon is no longer with the company. Vince McMahon has been ousted as the president and CEO and top shareholder of WWE Entertainment, which is now part of the TKO group in UFC. So he's no longer with them. This 6-episode documentary comes out, and if you are like me and Jay, you'll learn nothing new. Yeah. We all knew everything that was in this documentary, but there were some interesting things that were said that Vince himself even talked about, some things that raised a few eyebrows. But ultimately, before the documentary came out, Vince McMahon released a statement distancing himself from the documentary, which a lot of people were like, oh, this is going to be a really bad documentary.
I thought they were going to go into the entire like new allegation court case, but no, a lot of this was filmed in 2021.
So I've watched all 6 episodes and I learned almost nothing new from my perspective. No, the best thing in the documentary that I saw was the Shane McMahon stuff in episode 5, just to kind of learn, like from that perspective. But outside of that, there was nothing major that was learned from this. Vince McMahon's a crazy person. We've all known that. He's not operating in reality. And he's willing to do literally anything for the sake of the business.
Yeah.
He's willing to do anything. He will do anything. Now, there was a report, and I don't know if you saw this, there was a rumor that Vince was actually going to respond with Kevin Dunn. This was a rumor that broke yesterday. Vince McMahon working on a response to the documentary with Kevin Dunn that is now being debunked, saying that Vince McMahon and Kevin Dunn are not working together on a response to Mr. McMahon. So that was going pretty viral yesterday. But it turns out that's not the case at all, that there is no response from Vince and Kevin Dunn over this. So what were your thoughts on the documentary overall?
I think, it was cool to kind of see like the timeline period that we already, through WCW and the Monday Night Wars, Attitude Era, why they went to the PG era, just for sponsorships and why they, they were just doing things, like you said, he was doing things for the business and for money, just to try to get a pop. The stuff with his family, that I think that was the only thing that I was a little curious about, is like why wasn't it passed on, But Vince was like, he left the company, Steph was in charge apparently, then he came back and then he sold it. So it's like no one in my family's getting it. So it's kind of like that. And but that was about it. Like you said, there's been other documentaries, there's been other shows out there that have literally documented the same thing. So
yeah, and I see Steph in the chat, so it's definitely a doc for normies, and as a wrestling normie, I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, 100%. If you don't know the stuff, like, this was probably very, very informative and fascinating to learn. If you're like me and Jay, you probably didn't learn almost anything, because
you kind of knew what was coming. You were just like, okay, well, the Ted Turner, I was like, all right, I know what's coming. I know about all that. I've seen tons of videos on those Monday Night Wars. That was peak, man. That stuff was like really good. The creation of Stone Cold, seen that a million times.
Yeah.
All that stuff. And, it is kind of interesting that they got into the Chris Benoit stuff a little bit. maybe that, but it's again, it was all stuff that we already knew. So
Yeah,
they tried to
pretty much.
cover Vince's life and like the different things that he went through. And I do think, yeah, if people watch it without knowing the whole stories, they probably will be. It does show how I think they said it best, that he's married to this business. Like that is everything to him. Women were suing him. And then after he settled with them, he still brought them back on the show.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, because he knew it would get a pop and he knew it, like, things would happen. So it was just, you know, that's just who he was. You know, he would settle a lawsuit and then be like, all right, well, now that we've settled the lawsuit, do you want to come back on the show after you've been through a traumatic experience? Sure, why not? We'll go back through the show.
Vince McMahon has always been a complete and total psychopath. Yeah. You've seen interviews over the years with like people like Bob Costas and other people where he'll get very confrontational. He'll try to fight them in the interview because they're asking him tough questions. And you see like how dangerous he is. Like Vince McMahon, I've been following wrestling my whole life. Like Vince McMahon has always been known as this really, really dangerous guy that will take things to the next level. And absolutely hilarious.
So all right, I'm gonna highlight Steph's comment real quick. He says, I wasn't sure why Vince put out that statement because I didn't see anything controversial in the documentary. It would, to be honest, it wouldn't surprise me if he just did that to drum up interest. like at the end of the day, it wouldn't surprise me if like you learn like, well, I just did that to drum up interest. So
everything with Vince is a work. And so that was me whenever, and even knowing that everything with Vince is a work, even still, when I saw him put that out, I'm like, ooh, this looks interesting. Yeah. And it made me interested. I'm like, Vince got me in the building again. But I think that it's just because there were things that were like right now. And again, when Vince filmed the documentary, that was prior to all of the stuff, you know,
the new
with
allegations.
Him, because he's left the company now. So he's no longer affiliated, no longer connected to it. So there was a lot that they probably left on the cutting room floor that he was not happy about. And you got to talk about, you're talking about a control freak, a man who has had control of every aspect of this business. Every documentary that's ever came out, every interview, every word, he has had the final say on all of it. And now he's had none of it anymore. You know what I mean? So interesting. And I don't know what's gonna happen from it. I'm not sure. But I wanted to kind of talk about it a little bit because it's definitely for normies. It's not for wrestling fans. And it's more of a history of WWE more so than a documentary about Vince McMahon and his life.
Yeah.
But what that man accomplished is unbelievable. What he did, dude, the hypocrisy in Vince of like saying like how like Ted Turner, like how they're coming after a small family run business. And it's like, what? Like what?
It's just like one part where it was like, you okay, Vince? What are you thinking about right now? Hot sex. You're just like, all right. And then they went to another segment. You're like, what? Was that an edit, or that's just who he is, you know? So
yeah, absolutely
pretty
crazy.
wild.
But to be that guy and to run that industry the way he ran it, you kind of have to be a little unhinged. You know what I mean? To manage those massive, larger than life personalities.
His family through and everything too. It's just like,
yeah. So anyway, if you're interested, you check it out. If you're a normie, if you're a wrestling fan, you're not going to get a lot out of that one. You're just not. So that's my take on it right there.